And
Where are you
here we are.
based?
Yes, here we are, potentially going live any second now. It ticks away. Here we are, live from Berlin, live from the UK. It's Molten Chat again. Please let us know in the comments if you can hear me, and if you can hear Helen. I will
Yes,
learn
good point.
to put my hand the right way after a dozen streams. Oh, this way. Do let us know that you can hear us. Please say hello in the chat, and then we will kick off. But you know, technology and that, I just need to know, because I did this wonderful introduction to a friend of mine the other day, and the mic was down the entire time, and it wasn't anywhere near as funny the second time through.
It never is. It never is.
No, it never is. All good, says Christian.
Oh, wicked.
Yeah, you can hear
All
us.
right.
Great.
Game on.
Fantastic. Right. Good evening and welcome to Molten Chat. I'm Robin Vincent. I have next to me that way Helen Leigh, who is a hardware hacker, a person who sews synthesizers and crafts up bits of noise and stuff, messes around with music technology, someone who I've followed for a little while, a fair while on Twitter, and I'm always fascinated by this side of synthesis. I mean, I see myself as a bit of a DIYer, but only at a level we'll get into at some point. But the side where you actually take things apart and make new things from things you hadn't thought of before, that is a whole world of mystery to me. So I'm very pleased to have Helen here to talk about these sorts of things. So how the heck are you, Helen?
I'm doing all right, considering the world is ending. You know,
Yeah.
I'm here having a fairly nice time, doing some reasonable things. I've got some interesting work coming up. So yeah, it's all good. It's nice and sunny here in Berlin as well. So, you know.
Yeah, we have had that. We've had that in the UK too. It's been nice. Been out on the bikes today, mucking about. So you don't have
I didn't leave the house today actually, but I did go outside on my balcony, so that counts. Yeah.
Are you in the centre?
It's a little bit hungover actually. So, I'm in like I'm in Neukölln, which is the kind of center of my world in Berlin. It's not the center of Berlin itself. I rarely leave my neighborhood. It's very stereotypical Berlin, like if it's more than a 45 minutes walk away, I just don't want to know. You know, I've got my makerspace, I've got my hackerspace, I've got my friends, I've got my favorite kebab shop. I've got my favorite dirty little bars. Like, why on earth would I want to go anywhere else?
What more could you possibly need?
Yeah, apart from none of the bars are open, of course, you know, but.
Oh, yes. But you have an enormous cup of tea or a cup of something.
I do. I actually have two things. I have a cup of tea to be healthy, and then I have a glass of sake for enjoyment.
Nice. Yeah. Just to smooth the evening.
It's herbal tea. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So we're here because it has been or would have been or could have been Superbooth this week. We've had a lot of online virtual Superboothing, but the real thing is really the thing that we miss.
Yeah.
But you've been to Superbooth before, I believe.
I have, yes. I went last year. One of my friends snuck me in. He got a bunch of free tickets because it's so German. He made a synth bike. So it was this massive sound system, huge sound system that is on an electric bike that he just cycles around and plays like really, really techno music. So he made that at the hackerspace, one of the hackerspaces close to me. So we went there with the synth bike and hung out and got nerdy with lots of people. It was my last year at Superbooth actually. And like the events I would normally go to would normally be more in the hacker world than the music world, and I was extremely pleasantly surprised by Superbooth. It's become one of my to-dos, and I'm very sad it's cancelled this year, especially because it was going to be a bumper weekend with Ableton as well. I was booked to do a full day of workshops at Ableton Live. I was doing a stitch and glitch workshop. So I designed a fully embroidered analog synthesizer, which I was going to be doing with all the attendees there. But of course, you know, all of our dreams have been shattered, and you were not able to sew a synth with me this weekend, as well as go to Superbooth. Like,
that would have been awesome. I can't believe. Where do you even begin with these sorts of things?
What, these kinds of projects?
Yeah.
So this particular project was a version. So do you know Nicholas Collins? He wrote the book Handmade Electronic Music. Is that the title of it? Anyway, it's like an iconic music hacker textbook. He's a professor at the University of the Arts in Chicago or something, but he also comes and does workshops in Berlin relatively often. And I went to one of his workshops, which is an homage to the Crackle box, like the Crackle Brothers. And he made this cute little Crackle box synth that you use like a simple, it's like a chip called an LM386. It's a little, it's quite an iconic audio chip. And the circuit for this Crackle box was really simple. And I was like, I could sew that. So I decided to make, because I really enjoy experimenting with like different textures and putting electronics and things that you wouldn't necessarily think about electronics being present in. And I was like, oh, it'd be really cool to do like a fully embroidered analog Crackle box. So I did it, and then Ableton asked me if I would do a workshop, and I was like, what about this? And they enjoyed the idea. But of course, it was not to be. Maybe next year, we'll see. But it was quite fun. But that particular project was a riff of somebody else's project, just putting my own spin on it by embroidering, using electronic embroidery. So yeah.
Well, everything is always seeming to come from somewhere else. You know, everyone that I've spoken to has builds on what comes before or borrows.
There's no shame in that.
No,
there's no shame in that. You don't have to like invent everything. You know, it's all about taking your own passions and your own way of looking at it and kind of implementing it. I mean, like look at the whole history of art. It's just people riffing off other artists, and it's the same in hacker culture as well. And particularly like, well, hacker culture has a lot of this open source culture around it as well, which is very much, you don't create your own thing every time. You might work together on something, and you kind of collectively moving a project forward rather than like. So yeah, I'm very much a believer in riffing off of other people, giving credit, of course. I wouldn't be like, I invented this synthesizer. I'd be like, no, this is a Nicholas Collins design. I've just sewed it. But it's important. It's good for us to know our history as well. It is, it's good for it's good knowledge. It's almost, if you think about it, it's kind of a method of storytelling. These kind of like recreation of objects with new technologies or with old technologies or different craft materials, and you're always giving little nods back to the people that came before you. So, and I definitely count Nicholas Collins as a big influence of mine. So it was very much like an homage to Nicholas Collins, but also an homage to the skill of embroidery. So, which I kind of suck at, to be fair. Like,
I think there's a really nice perspective, a really interesting way of looking at things. We're always gnashing our teeth a little bit in Eurorack and synthesizer worlds about who's done what from who, and why can't anyone ever come up with anything original, and who did that before, and does that sound like that, and why doesn't it sound, and is that authentic or is it not authentic? And there's knots that one can tie yourselves up in that kind of stuff.
It's quite macho as well. But I'm not. Yeah, I'm just. You have to be the creator of this thing. And I'm like, well, no, I just make things that please me. Inspired by people I like. And I don't imagine Nicholas will mind that I've used his circuit.
No, I'm sure. Well, it rarely comes from the makers. That's the thing. It's the commentary. It's the armchair commentary that's true. Prefers to compartmentalize. Yeah, because it makes things easier to handle if we know which box to put it in.
It's very true. Yeah, the peanut galleries always have the worst things to say. Like the people who are actually making things are more encouraging, I think. Yeah, I think so. So my friend, this isn't to do with music, but it's a good example of this. But he's making an open source laptop. Which is amazing. It's super cool. Like every part of it, like so you can do all these little modular things with it. And he's been just working on this in his spare time. And like all the other hackers that I know are like, oh, it's so cool. Lucas is doing really amazing things. And then like you put it on Hacker Day where general public see it, and they're like, well, it's not as attractive as an Apple. And I'm like, well, that's because it's one dude in his spare time, like making an open source laptop. Pipe down.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of that about There's a lot of
There really is.
one man companies and one woman companies, knocking stuff together and
More
up
power to
against
them.
but often up against behemoths who would like to have a chunk of this burgeoning market, because we're in quite an exciting time in synthesizers.
It very much is. Yeah, I see so many creative uses of electronics. Actually, that's where the hacker world and the music world really like smush together. I mean, there's the weirdos like me on the fringe, but like the mainstream, like I make like lots of very weird instruments. I don't make things that you would sell necessarily. I make these strange experiments, but you see a lot of people from the hacker world who have moved more towards music, and and what they make is synth boxes. All these little these add-ons, these it's very exciting. I mean, I'm not a modular person myself. As an artist, I've never had the money to indulge in that particular music fetish. She says with a sub 37 behind her. So obviously I have spent some money on some synthesizers in my life. But yeah, I've not really got into modular, but I see so many hardware hackers getting into modular, and it's pretty exciting. And one I've seen some really interesting like codable ones as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of a lot of Arduino and Tinsy and all those other little microprocessors appearing on the backs of modules these days.
Bless Teensy. I've actually seen one that's been coded using Python recently, Circuit Python. Really interesting. So like something that you wouldn't necessarily, like a language you wouldn't necessarily think of as like super performance, like in terms of like how fast it is on hardware. But you're starting to see, like, I've seen some like hardware synthesizers using CircuitPython, which is very interesting.
There's a development project that escapes me. It might be called Daisy, I think, is coming into my head somewhere. And they at NAMM passed. You're familiar with NAMM? It's a big music show in the States. It's like Superbooth times 1,000.
Oh, I've not been to there, but
But there they were showing this development platform. I think they called it Daisy, which was based, which had Python coding within it. And they had a Eurorack version, which had the board sort of stuck on the front. They had a guitar pedal version and a little desktop version. And it was a brilliant way of encouraging developers to get stuck in. Because, I mean, often someone might release a platform for something, but then not actually realize it in any kind of hardware fashion so that people who aren't hardcore programmers can get their teeth into. You need to have something in your hand that goes, okay, I can do this, and then I can start working with it. So that is starting to come along as well, rather than just the development platform, which is quite exciting. It makes you think, I could learn a bit of programming potentially.
You could. It's so accessible now. It really is. So I do a lot of teaching. I actually teach a master's module on music hacking in London. And I teach it to audio producers. It's actually it's very interesting to me. So like I have taught like technical people technical things, but like more often than not, I teach artists how to use technology in their work. That's hard, man. I find it so much more exciting. I genuinely do. In fact, the one that the master's module that I teach is all audio producers. And I think, I know I'm the wild card, right? So like they've got their normal, door lessons and their make your tracks, like how to do music business. And then they're like, spend an intensive week with Helen and she'll teach you how to code and like solder and teach you about the history of hardware hacking, and I kind of come off like this slightly nutty professor, but I say, like, the audio producers, even though they've never ever seen a line of code before in their life, they've never like made anything with a circuit, their knowledge in audio, once you give them the basic tools, it enables them to create instruments that are actually way more intuitive or way more exciting than an engineering student would create. Because you give an instrument brief to an engineering student, and they're going to be like, "Oh, I'm going to use an ultrasonic sensor, and I'm going to make a theremin," and I'm like, "Cool." Yes, because I really want to listen to a sine wave, like go woo. yeah, it might be technically, they might create something that's technically more accomplished, but it'll sound absolutely terrible. Whereas the audio producers, like, because these days hardware is so much more accessible, you can even start off and make a bunch of things with just block code. So which I mean is visual code. So you're basically like slotting things together.
Yes.
So you don't have to worry about syntax. You're not typing anything. You're literally just making a jigsaw puzzle with the functionality that you want it to do. So maybe 10 years ago, you wouldn't have been able, like someone without a background wouldn't have been able to create their own musical instruments. But these days you really can. It's the bar for it's very much more accessible, and particularly with companies like Adafruit, Adafruit are like this American company. They sell hardware and hardware kits, essentially, like little microcontrollers, little sensors, LED speakers, blah blah blah. But the really awesome thing about someone like Adafruit or someone like P. Maroney in the UK is they have great documentation, so you're not just like left there figuring it out on your own. So like I find like this whole ecosystem is so much more accessible these days. In fact, you mentioned the glove I did for Imogen. So I guess for those of you for the people who are watching and don't know, I created a gesture-based. It was a DIY version of their kind of grown-up glove. So Imogen Heap and her team, they created something called the Mimu glove, which is this really awesome, essentially like a really awesome MIDI controller, except it's a glove, right? And it would, it went on. So you've got all these different sensors inside it, and it went on tour with Ariana Grande and like so many really.
Oh, hang on. Wait.
That's the kids one.
That's it.
That's the kids one. Yeah, that's the kids one that I made. But there's a grown-up version that's like costs like $2,000.
For some reason, that killed the audio. Just give me 1 second.
Oh, okay.
Let's just put that up for a second and just marvel at it. And then I'll put you back in.
It's very simple.
I'm not going to try to work that out.
I was actually the model on that as well. I've got one.
Ah, nice.
Yeah. That's
Look at that.
I know. Oh dear, I can't do camera directions either. Yeah. So basically, it's a gesture. Not. I'm talking about the grown-up one now. So I made a children's version of their like $2,000 MIDI controller. Which is fantastic. All singing, all dancing, like good enough for a stadium tour with Ariana Grande, which requires a high degree of stability. And I saw a video of it being used on stage, and I was like, oh my goodness, that's so cool. I really want to be able to use that in a classroom setting. I thought it would be really inspiring. So I approached Imogen and I was like, hey, would you be down for me making a children's version that's super cheap and super simple? So that's what that kit that we just saw was. So I made that 2 years ago now. But the point really for that is like, it's extremely simple. Like I've done that with 6-7-year-olds. If they're able to hold a needle, they're able to make a DIY wearable, gesture controlled musical instrument that uses block code, and like you just like slot things together, and then you've got yourself something that you can put on your hand and make sound effects with. You can get it syncing up to your computer and like controlling GarageBand, doing all these things, but really that's something that's a very young child can do. And that's the level of accessibility that we're talking about these days. No, and that's relatively recent that we've had these kind of visual coding things.
What I loved about the whole glove thing, because I was I wrote about it a couple of years ago for Gears, was that because there's a lot of this stuff about. I mean, I've been following gesture control for a long time. Very much into touch screens. I was into the whole leap motion thing. I can put my hand up. I've got one of these ring things that translates
I
to TV.
saw that. Yeah.
This little darling thing. I mean, this is
nice.
Thousands and thousands of pounds worth of research and development. Yeah. Ends up on Kickstarter where we all go whoopee, and then my arms ache. But what I loved about the gloves was that, well, you're kind of doing the same thing, just so much simpler and easier, and it's crafting, which is an odd. It's an odd world, but at the same time, it's a very engaging place to do
It
things.
is.
You know, it's another
And
one
it
of these
keeps the
boxes that
children
opens in your
quiet for a
head.
long time.
Yes, it does. It's like, I mean, there's moments in my messing around with music technology that sort of stay with you and just go, okay, so that's a whole other thing. One of those things was when Look Mum No Computer. I don't know if you're familiar with Sam from that.
Yeah, I know Sam.
He made a filter on the back of a cornflakes packet with a pen of conductive material. I don't know what that's called. And I just sat there going, wow, that's just extraordinary. Because no, I mean, a filter is a piece of electronics that's stuffed inside a box that I would never look inside, you know. And then here it all is out on the back of a cornflakes packet. That's ridiculous. And that's a similar idea to what I see in what you do, if that's not being terribly patronising.
No,
but,
not at all. Not at all.
The idea that you can sew these things together with simple materials just blows my mind. I think that's amazing, and it demystifies these boxes and into ways where
aim.
I can connect them differently, use them differently.
That's the aim for me. Is using music and these kind of craft techniques to just demystify technology for young people and for artists, because technology is an amazing tool. And I think some people think, oh, it's not for me. And so you don't have to be, it's like sport, right? You don't have to be a professional football player in order to enjoy a walk around the park, you know? And in a time where like more and more of our lives are controlled by things in little boxes, and maybe it's not a bad idea to start thinking, well, how can we understand what's going on in these little boxes? How can we actually empower some of these people to make use of it rather than just be consumers of that technology, you know?
Oh, totally.
Yeah, so it's the idea anyway.
We're enjoying having desks filled with little boxes now and starting to patch them together. I mean, that all leads us to following signal down cables and starting to understand how these things connect together. And it's another step to then see these boxes as naked, and you can actually start getting into them, let alone then the level of coding as well. It's very interesting, very exciting how those steps start to move, I think.
I agree. Yeah, it's fun to teach. It's a fun subject as well. Yeah. I've got a couple of things that I've been working on that I thought you might enjoy.
Bring it on.
They're both
they're
both very silly, but you might enjoy them anyway. All right, so let's go on from because this is the latest sewing thing. Let's see what we can get. Here we are. No, this way. Hang on. We can see here.
There we go.
There we are. Okay. So this is opposing side. So this is like a giant stuffed tentacle that you cuddle in case you're feeling a bit lonely in these times of intense loneliness. And what I've done is I've embroidered silver thread all the way down the inseam of this giant puffy tentacle. And then when you plug it in and put your headphones in, when you cuddle it and stroke it and give it love, it purrs. And that's all it does. So but it's basically a purring tentacle pillow.
Yeah, nice.
Thing. So that's my quarantine loneliness gesture. I've just finished filming that. I'll put all the files online when I finished it.
See, my Facebook feed is going to be full of massage pillows now, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Google would have heard that, and that would be
awesome. And then the other thing I've made is this. This is so. When you start getting into electronics, you start making PCBs, printed circuit boards, right? They're what you see when you open up the back of your electronics. Is essentially what guides the electricity to where it is. And I've been playing with this flexible circuit board. Isn't that cool? So you can have a flexible circuit board. And then the application for this is it's a wearable vocoder. So essentially, it's gesture based. So it goes around my neck. I won't put it on right now because otherwise I'll have to take all my things off. It goes around my neck, and basically, depending on which of the squares you touch in which order, it can tell what gesture sweep. So basically, you're able to add like a filter sweep to your voice, or you're able to like trigger like a delay or trigger chorus from this. So at the moment I've only got it working with a chorus. So that's patched into one of these. This is a capacitive touch sensor that I use. And then that goes into my favorite embedded instrument board at the moment is a board that comes out of a research lab in London called Bella, Bela, and it's wonderful in that it's like a Raspberry Pi and an Arduino had a baby. So you've got the responsiveness of an Arduino, and then you've got like the processing of a Raspberry Pi, and then it's got loads of really cool audio things as well. So it's designed for audio. And the wicked thing about it is it takes a computer out of the equation. So I'm able to make instruments and not have them connected to my laptop. So I can make a pure data sketch and just load it onto the Bella, and it just plays, which is really cool. So you can have it do all sorts of really complicated synthesis, but in an embedded instrument. And if you've seen my sonic circuit sculpture creatures, those are using the Bella. Do you see those on YouTube? They're kind of weird. They're like kind of terrifying spiders. One of them's a harp, and one of them is sub bass.
Oh yeah, no, I think I had you playing one on the thumbnail. I think that's the Bella. I think
that I like to use. They're really nice people. And it's open source as well, I think.
Yeah, they've been in touch, I think. I vaguely remember having a conversation with them recently. They were asking about it's one of those unanswerable questions on. So how do you get people to take more notice of us? You're trying to get me to write a news article about it, that kind of thing. And it's the old, well, I don't know. I mean, I think the advice I gave them, for what it was worth, was to give us something. So give us a pedal with it in. Give us something that we can grasp, so that we can see the potential. That's always the problem with if you're coming from a hardware perspective down to the microprocessor. You just need to see the application. Otherwise, it's just a bit of PCB.
Like, okay, cool. Like, to me, I'm like, oh, cool. Look at that board. What does it do? And everyone else is like, cool. Like, what is that? Like I started off by being like, look at my PCB, and you're like, okay, and then I'm like, oh, it's a vocoder, and then you're like, oh wow, that's really cool.
Exactly. Yeah. It could have been anything. So
it's flexible.
It's flexible.
That's what excited me.
Yeah. No, that's what's interesting. You see, this is where these two worlds collide. One's looking for the sonic output, maybe the other side's looking for how these things are put together, and somewhere in the middle we have this instrumentation where we like to interact with something. It's fascinating, really interesting.
Yeah, it is really interesting. It's very interesting seeing the different things that come up from different. Like, when you get only engineers using technology, you get very different outputs.
Yes.
So I'm very passionate about the idea of opening up technology to people from non-traditional backgrounds. I'm a non-traditional. I didn't study engineering or computer science. I didn't go to university at all, actually. And I'm what they'd call self-taught. So I learned how to code on the internet, and I learned how to solder a hackerspace. But I've just been doing it a while now, so I know my way around these things. So I think that the output that you get when you smush together two genres, and also you like open up a technology for the artists that use it, I think you just get much more magical things. You don't want 22-year-old Stanford graduates, Stanford, no. You don't want 22-year-old like MIT graduates dictating what art is, because just because they know how to make a nice circuit board doesn't mean they necessarily know how to create beautiful musical instruments. So I think it's important to have like a range of people in any industry.
Well, I mean, I think cool. That's definitely what we share in the Eurorack community, because it is very much a community vibe, and you have old timers who have been doing it for a long time, from old modular up through to Eurorack in more recent times. Swilling about with all these younger people as well, giving it a go, or bringing in more digital technologies, mixing up the technologies. It's brilliant. I mean, I started in. I mean, I came from computers, so computer software, DAWs, plugins, virtual instruments, all that. That was my bag for 20 years, and then I just got so bored of this thing being my only point of contact with the creative space, that I started just looking outside the box, and suddenly I fell down this road into the stuff that happens behind me.
That's a lot of little metal boxes behind you.
Little boxes and
with blinky lights.
But it totally ignited something in my I don't know, my dormant creativity, I think. But but what I found was that the community at the time was very engineering focused, very focused on the minutiae of the filter profiles and the characteristics of this and the authenticity of that, and it was really hard to penetrate. And this is only sort of 4 years ago, whereas since then things have really started opening up, and it's a very much a rolling ball or something moving somewhere. And part of what I like to do is to be really annoying to engineers and pick up their stuff and try to show, like, I'm a bit of an idiot, kinda, but I'm going to open this up and show people how it works, because a lot of people could be using this, and you're sort of keeping it out of the way because you want engineers to use it. And whereas all this stuff could be opened up to a lower and lower bar of entry, so all us idiots can have a go, because that's fun, We don't have to do it well.
Definitely fun. And actually, when you have a go at something, it's not like diminishing the skill of the original engineer. In fact, it increases it. Well, like circling back to the beginning of our conversation, saying that it's the peanut gallery that criticize. It's not the people who've had a go at it and know how hard it is. The greater portion of people like have had a go at it, the more they're going to respect the actual art of the craft, I guess, and the art of this kind of instrument making scene. And it's going to make more of a market as well for people. The more you tinker, the more you get obsessed with the world, and the more you accrue little metal boxes that make weird noises.
Absolutely. Do you move in software circles? Beyond the microprocessor, do you model in, for instance, things like VCV Rack we have in Modular World, which is a big virtual Eurorack space, or Softube Modular, or Reactor Native Instruments, things like that, or Max for Live. There's various
Max
ways
for
of
Live
doing it.
Open source equivalent is Pure Data, and that's used in my instruments. But I work with a composer who does my patches for me. Unless it moves, I don't code for it. Like I'm like
that's really interesting.
Like I don't know nothing about like web app, blah blah blah. I'm like, if it's not on a small computer, it's not for me. So I have a nice relationship with. It's my friend Andrew Hockey. He's a composer and does lots of Pure Data stuff. And basically we work together. We talk about an idea for an instrument, and I'll do the electronic side of things, and I'll do the physical making of it. And then he'll kind of like riff on my work and do all the kind of the software side, so the kind of creating the patches in Pure Data. So yeah, it's a nice little symbiotic relationship. Actually, the last time I met him, I was like, I should learn to use Pure Data. He was like, please don't.
But it's like having a singer in your band, isn't it? That's what it is. So he's your singer, he's your front man. Well, no, back man. Oh, I don't know.
The other way around.
Maybe he's the drummer. Maybe that's worse.
Exactly. He's the drummer. He's the drummer. Which means that everything would fall apart without him.
Yeah.
So no, he does that software. I mean, code obviously, but I code for microcontrollers. I don't really code for. I've done some Pure Data patches, but it's just not my area of speciality.
Well, for me, it's one of those words that comes up a lot that I just nod and go, yeah, Pure Data.
It's Max for Live. It's just a slightly uglier Max for Live.
Oh, right.
It's actually by the same person. So one of the guys that founded, I think one of the founders of Max for Live, they were bought and they started charging more and more money. And he was like, "Nah, mate, I'm out. Bye. I'm going to do the same thing, but I'll do it for free." He doesn't, it's free as in freedom, not free as in beer. So I mean, it is free to download, but the community do support them to a certain extent. I don't know how much, but it's the same guy that was one of the founders of, probably, I think he was the founder of Max for Life, and then he pieced out and made an open source version. So I'm sure there's some good audio drama behind that story. Unfortunately, I'm not privy to it. But it is Max for Life. It's Max for Life, but a bit uglier.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. And it's pretty cool. Yeah.
So your interaction with Ableton Live then, because you're involved in were going to be involved in their loop, is that something that you use, or did you learn it for the event?
No, I've used Ableton Live. It actually wasn't used at all in my workshop that I made for them. That software, it was purely analog. They just did so this year they had like one of their stage areas is all about makers. So they invited me for one of the days, and then some modular guys for another of the days. So it was less about, because it's quite an expensive conference to go to. It's quite a lot of money. I think part of it is making sure that their attendees are having a nice, memorable time, and like sewing a synthesizer is probably kind of like quite a nice niche thing. So I wasn't using any of their products, or even pretending to use any of their projects. I just was like, "What about sewing a synth?" And they were like, "Yes." So it was a pretty casual business arrangement.
Nice. So tell us more about Makerspaces and Hackerspaces. It sounds like a community art project sort of man.
True. Okay, so that's a good point. I didn't define what that is. So Makerspaces and Hackerspaces, they're like co-working offices. Instead of having desk space, or maybe actually more accurately, as well as having desk space, you have community-owned tools. Okay, so it's like a co-working space where you pay a membership, and then you get access to the space to go and hack on things. Like you might do coding there, or you might go and use the laser cutter or the 3D printer or the electronics bench or any number of power tools. So it's essentially like a big, well-stocked community workshop. But I mean, every one of them is different, and they have them all over the world. And Berlin, it's actually one of the reasons I moved to Berlin was because my hackerspace in London closed, and I didn't really rate any of the other hackerspaces in central London. Like all the good ones had kind of closed down. Or there was a couple left that was still okay, but they were quite far away from me geographically. So, and I knew that Berlin has this immense amount of like hackerspaces. So I came here to check out hacker culture while my passport still meant something. This was a couple of years ago. So I was like, oh no, it looks like Brexit's happening. I better get out. While my passport enables me to. I know, right? It seems so far away, weirdly. Well, they finally found a way to like shut up about Brexit, like,
yes,
and it was a global pandemic.
Yeah, we didn't see that coming.
No, I know. But yeah, so basically, there's these shared workshops, but there's always, I mean, every workshop, every one of them is different. But there's always certain tools, and there's always an ethos of people aren't experts, and you're supposed to be sharing your learning. That's kind of the point of it. They have been, since I first accidentally stumbled into a hack space, maybe 6 or 7 years ago, they have been just like a central point in my universe. I really like the way that the informal learning networks are really exciting to me. Just that you can go there and learn how to use an oscilloscope, or like learn how to make a circuit board or whatever. It's just like peer-to-peer informal learning. And also you have access to all these tools that you'd never be able to afford on your own, or have space to have on your own. You don't have the space or the knowledge to be able to install a laser cutter safely. And yet, there's probably like every major city has a fab lab or a hackerspace or a makerspace that you'll be able to pay a small amount of money and access them as you like. They all have different financial models, but so for example, I belong to a lovely hackerspace in Berlin called Xheim, and it costs me €13 a month, for which I have unlimited access to their tools and machines. We put on events there, like we have workshops. It's a wonderful space. I'm also a member of Seabase, which is the first hackerspace in the world, and that's in Berlin. It's been around about 30 years, I think. But the cool thing about Seabase, which makes it iconic, is it's, I think, the only hackerspace also, it's not just the first hackerspace, it's also the only hackerspace to have its own mythology. So they have a story. I know, it's really fun. Wow. So basically, they're not a hackerspace. They are a spaceship that has crash landed through space and time, and it forms like the whole of the underneath of Berlin, and the like this to the TV tower is the central antenna in the middle of this spaceship. And the central aim of the hackerspace is to get back into space around 300 years from now, so that they don't upset the space-time continuum, so they can crash down through space-time again. So yes, and it's really weird. There's like lots of weird little aliens everywhere, and it's all kind of like dusty. And there's a bar, and like it's everyone's smoking inside. It's just like so Berlin. It's like an iconic Berlin hackerspace. You could definitely I don't like to have these stereotypes about what a hacker looks like. I mean, obviously I'm a hacker, and I mean, I don't know, I'm wearing black, so maybe I am a bit stereotypical, but like I'm also like, a woman, and wearing lipstick, and and I'm not like this typical like dude in a hoodie, like typing away, like but there are quite a few of those stereotypical hackers that you might see in like the 90s movies in Seabase. So it's kind of like, I don't know, it's a cultural icon place.
I mean, does it? Yes, I mean, has it essentially evolved from the computer hacker? Is that where these spaces have come from? So they originally were, messing with code. So I mean, at what point did it become more hardware? What made that happen, do you think?
Well, I think there's always been a relationship between code and hardware, and since hardware's become, well, I mean, you can't have code without hardware. Everything is hardware. Otherwise, because there's no machines to run them on. Otherwise, in fact, so I mean, I'd say that they wouldn't have called it hacker culture back then, but if you look back to the 1960s and the 1970s, when computer science was a baby, you had the homebrew computing club in Silicon Valley, and that's spawned personal computing. But those were a group of hardware hackers. It comes down to it, that's exactly what they were doing, and we continue in that spirit. And they've always been distinct spaces, but they were all more personal. So a hackerspace was very much like a place where anybody could come. So the homebrew computer club was more like people who knew each other, and they came together and brought their friends. It was more like friend of a friend of a friend kind of community, whereas a hackerspace is public and anyone can come and join. But it grew very much out of what's called the CCC movement. So CCC in Germany is the Chaos Computing Club, and it's basically a group of hackers, but they have them all around the country in Germany, and actually are considered to be so they get subsidized rent by the government as well, because they consider them to be socially. Hacking in Germany is very, very activist. There's a lot of activism, and there's a lot of recognition as well by the government that hackers perform a social good. It's not the hackers, they're all really naughty, they're trying to hack our bank accounts. It's more
all breaking the FBI databases.
Exactly. They understood. So, like, for example, if there was like a whatever the BBC equivalent is in Germany, if there was an interview and there was some kind of technology in there, they might call somebody from the Chaos Computing Club to come and actually give them an informed technical opinion. So there is a level of respect, like
I mean, I feel like I've wasted my life playing games and listening to Napster. I mean, I've often mused that I'm of the right generation to have invented computers. I grew up with Spectrums and Commodores and all that sort of thing, and I spent a little bit of time trying to make a tank move across the screen in machine code, and then I just got really bored and discovered girls and booze and stuff, so that it all went downhill from there. But it's stunning, I think, that that culture exists, because computers are often a little bit dull, other than in films and movies and stuff.
But it's about the community, though, isn't it? It's like I get to go and hang out with my friends and like nerd out about things. That's what makes Makerspaces.
Yeah, but that's not a common computer paradigm, though, is it? The common computer assumption is one is by oneself. Oh, totally. Yeah, I love that.
I think humans are social beings, and nerds too. I mean, before I didn't get into like hardware hacking until my mid-20s, like kind of by accident. But before that, I was always part of like geek culture. Like before that, I was a role player, like with my bag of dice. So it's very kind of similar in that people think that you're really socially isolated, but actually you have super strong social bonds. Okay, maybe you're not down the pub trying to pull, but you're in someone's room and rolling dice and defeating monsters. Like, it's nerd culture, and like I think it's a stereotype that we're not sociable. You have extrovert nerds and introvert nerds, just like you have like extrovert human beings and introvert human beings in general. Yeah, I've always found good culture very friendly and very, very communal based. Hackspaces are definitely part of that. Yeah, it's exciting.
I mean, there's been a great invention. I don't know. Synthesizer people getting together and having synth meets. There's one in Norwich, which is my nearest town, where one used to meet every month, hopefully, or every couple of months, which is great. I mean, if to do that previously, like in other worlds, like to try to do that as a guitarist, it just ends up being some kind of weird blues jam, and everyone gets very bored, or everyone just gets drunk, which becomes something else.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing with the synth meets is that it is very social, and it is with different sorts of people. There's not the cool people. It's not the people who will be down the pub anyway. It's the people who actually, this is my visit to the pub of the month. And I'm coming here with my mates with my boxes that go bing, and we're going to wire them together, and that's really and that's enough. And I think
that's the same in like hacker culture. It's just like those people aren't necessarily going to be going out drinking. So that is our social activity, is to go to a hackerspace and like teach things or learn things or like work on a project. And you say like computers are boring, but like computers are anything you want them to be. Yeah. Computers can like make a embroidered tentacle purr. Computers can make a piece of plastic into a gesture-based vocoder. Like computers can make stupid things, like so you can easily find something that you can do worthy things, or you can just go into the code for the sake of the code. But actually a lot of people just do things that amuse themselves. It's essentially like, it's less, when I talk to kids, I don't say that I'm a hardware hacker. I say that I'm an inventor.
Yes.
Yeah. Which sounds much more exciting, but it's the same thing. I'm just using technology to invent things that please me.
Yeah, but again, this is the thing that spills out of the box. I mean, my quip about a computer being boring is only a perception. I mean, it's been my life, weirdly. But what I love about the stuff you do and hardware and Eurorack and all these things is the fact that it spills out into some kind of reality. So although we can lose days in Minecraft, it's more interesting to have something spinning around on your desktop or making a noise. Than it is to have that in a virtual world, and that's the fascinating thing about it. That's why It's just
I like being able to invent things. It blows my mind that I can think of something and I'm like, oh, I could probably do that. Like, even with, I wouldn't consider myself highly skilled. I would consider myself, like a have a go type person. I've got some decent skills and I've got a decent amount of experience at this point, and I know what I'm doing to a certain extent. But like, I'm not, I don't have like 3 years of university, college, or whatever, and I certainly don't have any professional training or anything. But I love the fact that these days it doesn't really matter. In fact, you kind of even get a little bit more credit, kudos sometimes, because you're like, yeah, I don't know what I'm doing, but I've still made these cool things. It's about kind of the attitude. It's about the experimentation. It's super fun, and it's really rich. I think that kind of now it's accessible enough for ordinary people who just like want to have a go at something to make something. I think that's when these ridiculous creations start to become a reality, which is like, I don't know, it's just exciting.
It flipping is. You can relate that and draw parallels to that to people creating music. My Facebook feed is full of people live streaming or just putting up little videos of stuff they're doing. It's not produced, it's not finished, it's not gone through a door necessarily or had any polish put onto it, but just people are putting out there, this is a tune, listen to this, I did this with a thing, and I did this and it went like that. And it's like, and it's really, it's so good for us, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Allowing that creativity to flow through the technology that we have. I agree. Amazing. So you're so upbeat, man. It's just like infectious. I see it go, oh wow, the world's fabulous.
It is. That's why.
And it is.
We can't leave that out.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Did we have any questions from the chat, or?
I don't know. There are a bunch of. They just talk amongst themselves. Let me look really closely.
This is a format that's familiar
with.
With
glasses to see.
Oh, I don't know if there are any.
Well, if you had a burning question, then throw it in right now as we're looking. Is always a good thing.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
No, people are enjoying the chat and commenting on it. Said you need to drink more wine.
I do. This is an glass.
Yeah.
It's pretty strong though. It's this €3 sake for 750 mils that I've been getting at my local Chinese market, and it's not high quality.
Someone mentioned Transistor Sound Labs. Are you familiar with any Eurorack or synth companies particularly, or is it just something that you're
No, that's not really my world. No, I don't know them, but I do know what a transistor is.
Uh-huh.
But no, I don't know them. I only know like a few people from the hardware world who also do synthy things. I do very much appreciate it. I like walking around. Like, that's why Superbooth was such a revelation to me last year. It was like, oh my god, the intersection is pretty. I think eventually I will give in and start doing synths. So start buying some little metal boxes to plug together and make weird noises. I think it's inevitable.
I think so. It becomes a rabbit hole as well. That's the exciting thing about it. But there's been an awful lot of coverage over this last week. Videos being dumped out, which have been quite detailed. It hasn't quite got the pizzazz of going, oh look, there's a thing that's doing it, and then oh look, there's a thing doing a thing. So, but there's a lot of stuff that people can spend some time looking through if they so wish. With a lot of interesting things at the moment. Everything's gone a bit stereo suddenly. That seems to be the vibe of this year. Because Eurorack is mostly mono. We've been chasing this one signal around the place. And now everyone's suddenly decided that, no, we could have two, right? We could have it in stereo. We could pan things, which is very exciting.
That is very exciting.
Yeah, or we could do two things slightly differently in two different channels all at once with one knob. I mean, stereo.
It sounds like a crazy world.
I know, it's a bit of a revelation, to be honest.
Yeah.
But what it really means is you have to have two of everything, and that sucks because it's expensive enough as it is. Whenever people start talking about polyphony, it's like, polyphony's great if you've got a digital synth, that's easy. If you've got a Eurorack, it means doubling up, tripling up, quadrupling up on everything, and it's like, oh, darn it, that's hard.
That's a bit much. It's like, do you know how much a chord costs? It is a lot.
Yes, exactly. Cool.
I know. Outrageous. Well, it's been really fun sitting here and chatting with you. I hope you've had a nice time as well.
Yeah, absolutely. This has been brilliant.
Yeah,
See,
good.
yeah, I mean, and to people watching out there, we hadn't met before. I had no idea whether
No,
Helen was going to accept my invitation to come on this balmy show, and I'm so pleased
I
that she
was like,
did.
oh
Who's
my
this
God,
guy?
human. Yeah, yeah. I did Google you, and I was like, oh, you don't seem like, yeah. And also, what are you going to do to me, really? Like,
I know, I know. There's not a whole
exactly.
lot. I mean, it could get
Second half.
weird, but no, I don't want it to. What I will do though, look,
Exactly.
I'll bring this in. So Helen's had a book out for a little while. This came out last year,
Yes, my
which
children's
is
book on electronics. It
yeah.
exists.
See, it's a perfect lockdown manual for homeschooling. And funny enough, I mean, I spent this morning ordering copper tape and sewable
Oh yeah.
sequin LEDs and
Oh, that's so fun. And
bits and
the
pieces.
thing is with craft-based stuff is it takes your kids quite a long time to do it.
Yeah.
So it's like, I'll see you in 2 hours. Bye. Like,
Yeah. So we're gonna be
yeah.
putting some projects out of that when the other stuff arrives, probably
Very,
next week now, thinking about it. But
yeah.
that's gonna be great.
Um,
That's fantastic.
I did also want to say actually, if anybody's interested in the stuff that I'm doing, look me up on Twitter. I'm at Helen Leigh. I'm sure there'll be a link to it. But I'm actually going to be doing I'm probably not supposed to tell anybody this,
Oh,
but I'm going to be doing a new book on DIY music tech over the next
nice.
year. So keep yourselves on my Twitter, and I will. I'll be releasing some like little sneak peeks of that as it comes up. So everything from kind of DIY acoustic instruments through to weird experimental stuff, working with hardware, working with Raspberry Pi, doing live coding, kind of lots of introductory projects. So that'll be coming up hopefully in time for Christmas. So yeah, maybe I'll come on again
Yeah.
when it's coming out, and I'll take you through some of my new projects.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. That'd be brilliant. I mean, yeah,
Hmm.
I do have plans that this may continue. I may keep doing this. I don't know. I'm a bit exhausted at this point, and I'm only about halfway through, at least the plan. So yeah. Well, in that case, I'll just take the opportunity to remind people of what we have coming up, which is I have a day off tomorrow. Yes. Although I am
What?
homeschooling this week because my wife is working, sadly, this week. So I'm in charge of everything. But Wednesday night, I've got Stefano from Bastel here, Bastel Electronics. He is the designer of the Compass module, which is a probabilistic something or other. It's a journey into possibilities on 3 knobs. Then on Thursday, I have Matt Colville, who's a DM, a big what's the word, dungeon master in the sense of role-playing games that you spoke about earlier,
Nice.
and he's a modular enthusiast, and we're going to be talking about getting started with modular because he started a couple of years ago, and we're going to have that sort of discussion, so that should be fun. Then spinning into the weekend, I've got Panic Girl here on next Sunday. Then I've got This Is Not Rocket Science, I think Black Corporation, I can't remember after that. Oh, Tenderfoot as well. So more to come, and I'll create more links to stuff coming up soon. But importantly is just Bastel on Wednesday, Matt on Thursday, then moving into the weekend. Great, more chat, more stuff to talk about. Endless, so it seems.
Yeah. What a fun upcoming schedule.
Yeah, yeah. So any last questions in the chat? Quick. Yeah, no. Yeah, no, you're all right, are you? Having a nice time? Let me just check
Good.
bits and pieces. Yeah, good. Thanks for stopping by, everyone. That's super for you to come along and share this with us. This, of course, will be available on the YouTube channel to watch again and again and again. That would be great. Thank you so much for Helen. It's been an absolute pleasure to meet you and to just absorb some of your enthusiasm and some of the possibilities. You know, my mind's just going, oh yeah, but you could, which is great. That's what it needs. I love having little bits opened up so I can then explore something new. That's extraordinary. Thank you so
Good.
much.
It's been really fun. Nice to chat. And thanks for inviting me on. That was good times.
You're
All
very
right.
welcome. You're very welcome. Right. we will go then. We'll end the stream here, and have a good
Cheers, everyone.
couple of days, and we'll see you soon. Cheers.